Here comes some more lawsuits, and it looks like there may be some federal lawsuits in this case between Donald Trump's pay-for-play with Pam Bondi.
Donald Trump is having trouble giving the slip to a new scandal that's developing from a very old story. So old, in fact, that we told you about it on AM Joy way back in June. In September of 2013, the Orlando Sentinel reported that Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi was reviewing a New York lawsuit against Trump University and considering whether or not Florida should join a multi-state investigation into those allegations of fraud against Trump's real estate seminars. But just a few days after that announcement, a political group behind Bondi's 2014 re-election received a check for $25,000 from a Trump family foundation. This week, the Associated Press is reporting that the money arrived after Bondi personally solicited Trump for that contribution, and that after the check came in, Bondi's office nixed suing Trump, citing insufficient grounds to proceed. That Pam Bondi PAC, which called itself And Justice for All, told the Tampa Bay Times in 2013 that it did receive a contribution from the Trump Foundation, a contribution that is illegal under U.S. tax laws, which prohibit tax-exempt charities from giving money to political candidates. But instead of disclosing the illegal contribution to the pro-Bondi PAC, which again is called And Justice for All, the Trump Foundation claimed it had given money to a different nonprofit with a similar name, a Kansas-based group called Justice for All, without the and. That inaccurate disclosure, in effect, shielded the donation from the IRS because it appeared to be a legal contribution from one charity to another. In March, after the watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, aka CREW, filed a complaint about the donation to the IRS, the Trump campaign called the contribution mix-up a mistake. But the story returned to haunt the campaign last week when the Washington Post reported that Donald Trump had to pay the IRS a $2,500 penalty for violating the law. And this week, the story took on the whiff of a full-blown scandal when Trump said this.
What were you hoping to get out of that donation that you tackle about?
I've just known Pam Bondi for years. I have a lot of respect for her. Never spoke to her about that at all.
Trump's statement raised questions about whether what he said contradicted a Bondi advisor who told the Associated Press that Bondi personally solicited him for the contribution. The campaign walked back those remarks, telling Politico that Trump was referring to the Trump University case, not the donation. And joining me now are Noah Bookbinder, Executive Director for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, pollster and radio host Fernanda Mondi, Dan Gelber, a former U.S. Attorney in Miami, and Adam Smith, political editor for the Tampa Bay Times. Thank you all for being here. And let's actually start with you, Dan. Thank you for coming on the show. I read the post that you did, I believe it was this week, where you talked about the appearances of the Bondi exchange, let's say, of donations to her PAC for dropping the investigation, whatever the facts of it are. But I want to first play you what Pam Bondi actually has said about whether or not she solicited a contribution from Donald Trump. Take a look.
Of course I asked Donald Trump for a contribution. That's not what this is about. She was saying he was under investigation by my office at the time, and I knew about it, none of which is true.
So what do you know about this, Dan, about whether or not the office that Pam Bondi heads was looking into Trump University or not at the time that she solicited the contribution?
Well, let's be very clear. In August, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman sued the Attorney General sued Trump University, which obviously had a huge presence in both New York and Florida. In September of that year, there's an announcement that they're sort of reviewing it, and then 3 days later, a $25,000 check comes in. So, Pam's defense that I didn't know it was there, that's all well and good, but at the end of the day, a prosecutor isn't like a legislative politician. You can direct the full force of the government at somebody. You can protect people. You can punish people. And the idea that she would make that decision with this $25,000 check in her pocket raises so many issues and so many concerns. And honestly, what shocked me was if what she says is true, then she should have given back the money immediately. She should have returned the check. She should have said, it looks horrible, I'm not going to do it, and she didn't do that.
And I'll point out that there is a Boston Boston-based lawyer whose name is J. Whitfield Larrabee. I wrote a piece about this for the Daily Beast and to discuss the fact that he has actually filed a case with U.S. attorneys in New York and Florida. And just really quickly to stay with you, Dan, as a former U.S. attorney, is this a litigatable case potentially, which he has essentially filed, alleging that this could be bribery?
Well, the theft of honest services is typically the statute that federal prosecutors who do corruption cases go under. And it would be directed at both Trump and Bondi. Because at the end of the day, the question becomes, was Trump giving that money in order to get some kind of official action? And it's no defense, frankly, that it was a frivolous suit, if that's what Trump is saying. If you try to get a public official to take an official action by giving them money, you are violating that statute. So, you know, I don't know whether a private citizen can invoke that kind of investigation, but I agree with the Tampa Bay Times editorial board this week, which called for a federal investigation of this, because rarely does a prosecutor get a sequence of events that are so clear. You know, literally days after there's an announcement that the thing is being reviewed, a $25,000 check appears. Even if Pam Bondi didn't know what her own spokesperson had said, certainly Donald Trump knew that that office potentially could be reviewing that complaint. And the idea that he would try to encourage an action based on that money, that's corrupt. And frankly, given what he has said earlier and repeatedly, I pay politicians to get things done and to get what I want. He uses much saltier language than I just did.
Yeah.
You know, it sort of suggests that it's not hard to close the loop on the facts in this case.
And to just the point you just made, let's play Donald Trump actually saying the thing that you just alluded to, but using the saltier language. Take a listen.
I've given to everybody because that was my job. I got to give to them because when I want something, I get it. When I call, they kiss my ass. Okay? Sure.
And Noah Bookbinder Crew has also filed a complaint with the IRS, or filed a complaint, a federal complaint about these transactions. Can you explain that complaint a little bit?
Sure. We've actually filed a series of complaints, and our most recent complaint is based on the idea that Donald Trump appears to have used his foundation, a charitable foundation, the Donald Trump Foundation, which actually gave the money to Pam Bondi, to do something to benefit him, in other words, to give the money to Pam Bondi in an apparent attempt to influence her to not go after his business interests. You're not allowed to use a charitable foundation in that way, and we've asked the IRS to investigate that. We've also asked them now, as we did back in March, to investigate the fact that the Trump Foundation appears to have lied about this contribution in its tax returns. The Trump Foundation said in its tax returns it hadn't given any political contributions, and it listed the contribution as going to a totally different organization, one with a similar name, a Kansas nonprofit, which would have been a legal recipient of this money in a way that Pam Bondi's political organization was not.
Yeah, and Fernand, you know, you have a pattern here. You do also have the Donald J. Trump giving money, about $100,000 to Citizens United, which happened to be in litigation with one of his big enemies, which is, of course, the New York Attorney General. You have Ivanka Trump also donating a $500 donation to Pam Bondi. You have this party that was thrown, a big co-hosted by Rudy Giuliani, a fundraising party at Mar-a-Lago. It's tough to argue that this is a non-scandal, and that do you think Donald Trump can somehow skirt it or get away from it, Fernand?
I don't, and I'll be very candid with you, Joy. I mean, this reads like a scene out of some sort of mafia movie where Don Corleone is pulling the strings, except it's Donald Trump doing it in real life. And what I find the most interesting, or maybe the most galling, is the chutzpah of the Trump campaign, who makes the case over and over again about the seeming impropriety about pay-for-play taking place within the Clinton Foundation, where there's nothing really proven to have been done. Yet here we have an undeniable smoking gun. And Joy, let me also add, there were $250,000 in contributions between Donald and Ivanka Trump made to the Republican Party of Florida at the same time. You start to put the pieces together, and if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's pay-for-play done by Donald Duck Trump here in this case. I think it's a clear-cut case, and it's incredible to me the double standard that the Trump campaign is applying when it comes to how they judge the Clinton campaign for doing the very thing that there is clear evidence that they've done themselves.
And Adam Smith, we're going to talk a little bit about about whether or not the media is applying the same standard to the Clinton Foundation, the email stories, and this story. How is this playing out? You know, you're at the Tampa Bay Times, or the premier paper there in Florida. How is this playing out both for the Donald Trump campaign and for Pam Bondi in terms of the way it's being reported in the media in Florida?
Well, it's getting a lot of play in Florida. You know, everybody's consumed with anything that happens with Donald Trump, and this is, I think it's a lead story in the local news. It's all over the papers. Pam Bondi has basically gone into hiding and won't talk to the press unless it's Fox News. So this is getting a lot of play.
And as far as the Republican Party of Florida, Fernand just pointed out, they also got substantial contributions here. Is there a way to draw an influence that essentially Donald Trump began to fund the Republican Party of Florida and his friend Pam Bondi at the same time, or is he a longtime donor to the party?
He's not a longtime donor to the party. He has given to the party, but he's a big donor to both to Rick Scott, who's our current governor, and that's when he started spending a lot of money. Frankly, this came up in the primary because Jeb Bush had zero interest in expanding gambling in Florida, and so Trump had sort of given up on him. I think he saw more opportunity. This was pre-presidential campaign with doing something with Rick Scott as the governor.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the Huffington Post did add new details to this story this week, reporting that months after the Trump Foundation's donation to the pro-Bondi PAC, Donald Trump held a $3,000 per person fundraiser for Pam Bondi at his Mar-a-Lago mansion in Palm Beach. And joining me now is someone who attended that fundraiser, Peter Feeman, who's with the Republican National Committee for Florida. Tell us about that fundraiser, Peter.
All right, this guy is a big-time Trump supporter, and watch how he tries to pivot from this story on Trump to the Clinton Foundation.
Hi, Joy. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So the fundraiser that you attended for Pam Bondi, tell us a little bit about what went on there. Who attended it? What other prominent luminaries from Florida politics were there?
I was at that fundraiser, that's correct, but I think that you're focusing on a fly in the wall when there's really a 900-pound gorilla in the room, which is the whole Clinton Foundation. This is one fundraiser in one episode. You have the Clinton Foundation. There are 181 people, individuals, corporations, governments that gave to the Clinton Foundation while Hillary was the Secretary of State. At the same time, those same individuals are lobbying the State Department. So this is
actually, Peter, that story that what you just said is actually not accurate. Hold on a second, Peter.
See, and that's the standard Trump surrogate tactic. Get away from Trump and get on to Clinton Foundation, emails, etc. Joy doesn't let him get away with it, though.
I asked you about a fundraiser that you attended, and you pivoted to talking points about the Clinton Foundation, which aren't even accurate. So I'm going to try one more time to ask you about the event you attended. You're the one person that's at this virtual table who can tell us about that fundraiser. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to do so.
I was there. I've been to hundreds of fundraisers. It was a very good event. Rudy Giuliani spoke. He was tremendous, as usual. Pam Bondi is a rock star down here in Florida.
Does it trouble you? Does it trouble you?
It was very well attended because she's so popular.
Does it trouble you that the donations to Pam Bondi's foundation were both shaded in terms of putting the wrong foundation name on the IRS form? They've now had to pay a fine over it. And also that it was given through the Trump Foundation, not by Trump himself. Thus seeming to really try to shade that contribution to her, and that it came at a time when her office had decided not to investigate Trump University. Does that trouble you as a donor?
It troubles me a lot less than what I see with the Clinton Foundation and everything that goes on there. So,
okay, well, your talking points are pristine, sir. You've done. I think you've done what you came to do as a surrogate.
To the other side,
it actually isn't. It actually isn't. And actually, let me go to my other guests who can sort of explain that. Dan Gelber, why don't you explain to Mr. Feynman here what is at stake in terms of this specific donation to Pam Bondi from the Trump Foundation?
Well, the problem is that, a prosecutor can make a decision about whether somebody is punished, whether people are protected, and I don't know a prosecutor. I literally don't know a prosecutor who would think that taking money while you're making that decision, even if it's a decision to do nothing, because that's a decision, would think that would be appropriate or consistent with any democratic principle.
Yeah, and
prosecutors, this is what they do. And I'm married to a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor. My family members are prosecutors. That's my world. And to a person, it's an offensive concept to implicate money with that decision. And when you think about all those people who attended Trump University who feel they were ripped off, what do they think when they know that the person who is supposed to vindicate their interests is actually taking a huge check from the person they think ripped them off?
Yeah, and I'm going to give the last word for Nana Bondi on this, because we do see that the Trump surrogates come armed with the talking point that they want to pivot to the Clinton Foundation. Is there any symmetry between the Clinton Foundation, which Donald Trump was a huge donor to, he gave $100,000 to it, and what we're seeing here in this Bondi situation?
Well, Joy, until this alleged corruption, alleged malfeasance in the Clinton campaign ends in a smoking gun, like we now have clearly in this pay-for-pay smoking gun, that's the Bondygate situation between Trump and Pam Bondi. I don't think so. I think it's just more allegations, throwing stuff against the wall, hoping that it sticks. But in this case, this ended in terms of being allegations that became real when you played the clip of Pam Bondi saying, yeah, I solicited the money.
Yeah, and she got it as well. And we will keep this story going. Thank you very much to Peter Feynman, Noah Bookbinder, Fernand Amandi, Dan Gelber, and Adam Smith. Appreciate you guys. All right, and up next.
All right, so let's see where this one goes. Donald Trump has so many goddamn lawsuits going for so many different things. I mean, it's clearly ridiculous, but this one, if it goes federal, could be a really bad lawsuit. And it could obviously get him, and it also is going to probably destroy Pam Bondi, given that she is in hiding and not appearing anywhere other than Fox, which is obviously going to give her, support.